We've got plenty more Hearthstone Grandmasters for you guys right now as we move on into match number 3 of this. It's going to be Pathra versus DawN. Pretty pumped for this one, mainly just because we get to see more Mage.
Yeah, I'm excited to see some Warrior and Mage after yesterday's plethora of Mage and Rogue matches. It's nice to see what one of the matches that we want. Well, one of the reasons Mage became popular because they wanted to target Warriors.
Yeah, we're really going to put these decks, just through everything we possibly can to work out how good these matchups are. But for a minute, let's just focus on these players. So if you don't know too much about Pathra and DawN, check this out.
My name is Patrick Cadness, and my handle on Twitter is Patrick Cadness, and my Battle.net tag is Pathra. The person that stands out the most to me is Tyler, while I was lining up outside of Worlds. And I think I'd love to beat him. It's like a streamer versus streamer battle. An average day for me would be waking up, walking my dog, eating while watching someone stream, and then starting up my stream, and then after that, walking my dog again, eating again, and then sleeping. I do think that, yeah, I'm one of the weakest players in this tournament. Like, I would say I'm an underdog. And also, just like being on HGG, I remember seeing people predict that New Zealand would be at the very bottom, but we managed to get top 8 basically both years in a row. And so I do feel there's a lot of pressure for me. I feel like New Zealand is just wanting me to do well, and all the women that are watching me who play Hearthstone are just watching me, and I want to do well for them too. So I remember that pressure hitting me yesterday, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's actually hitting me now. But yeah, I feel okay about it now, and I think I could do it. And I'll do my best, of course.
Hi, my name is Hyunjae Jang, and my Hearthstone nickname is DawN. I'm streaming on Twitch. 처음 그랜드마스터가 되었을 때는 어느 정도 좀 하위 그룹은 면하고 싶다라는 생각도 하기는 했었는데, 확실하게 제가 그 프로로서의 모습을 보여주고 싶기 때문에 저는 플레이오프까지는 좀 목표를 두고 있습니다. 제가 하스스톤을 하고 나서 가장 많이 바뀐 점 중에 하나가 부모님이 이 게임에 관심을 가지게 되고, 관심을 가지게 되시고, 또 아버지 같은 경우에는 방송에 관심을 가지게 되셨고, 어머니 같은 경우에는 실제로 이 하스스톤을 직접 플레이하고 계신다는 점이 좀 하스스톤 하고 나서 많이 바뀐 점인 것 같습니다. 제가 방송을 하는 걸 이제 보는 걸 굉장히 관심을 가지고 계시고, 아침에 이제 방송을 안 켰을 때 가끔 연락을 하시기도 합니다. 이제 2015년에 제가 처음으로 이제 우승을 하게 됐을 때, 그때 한국에서 처음으로 1억이라는 상금을 획득하게 됐고, 이제 그걸 기념하듯이 팬분들이 그 100K 원에 대해서 좀 그런 식으로 애칭으로 1던이라고 좀 불러줬던, 그게 유래가 됐습니다.
Always nice to see when parents support Hearthstone players. It's always a strange career to tell your parents about, like, yeah, I play video games, or I want to play video games for a living. Most people just don't believe it's possible, but it is for DawN and it is for Pathra, as these players are going to be going at it with this Mage and Warrior. So let's take a look at DawN's Mage to kick off with and see what the differences are. These are going to be the Cyclone Mage that we've talked a lot about this weekend, but what does this build do a little bit differently than some of the others we've seen, Language Hack?
Well, in contrast to Brivius's and Tyler's Mage specifically, there are no Frost Novas in this deck, and a difference from Stas' Mage is that obviously Stas' Mage is just a lot of big minions, no spells. So this is kind of what I'd say is more standard version of Cyclone Mage, not quite the newest one that people have figured out, but one that's kind of proven itself over the past week or two. Just to recap what the deck can do, similar to the old Conjure Mage, it still has powerful Giant and Conjurer's Calling turns where you can either get multiple Giants or big taunts in the way, but it also has a lot of cheap spells that can be used in accordance with the Sorcerer's Apprentice and the Mana Cyclone to just refill your hand with a bunch of random Mage spells, which on average are pretty powerful. Mage spells are pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful overall, and some of the newest iterations. Obviously, these players had to submit, a few days ago now, but already we're seeing differences and changes in these deck lists. Like players are starting to play water elementals in the list to help with the warriors and the rogues as well. And also, it's just a 4-drop that you can, a pretty steady sort of turn you want to get just something solid down, similar to how powerful you see Vex Crows sometimes, even just as a minion to play. But let's check out Patra's warrior and see how it's going to fare against this mage. What do you make? It looks like a pretty standard bomb warrior with maybe the addition of that execute in there over a weapons project, for example. But what do you make of it going against DawN's list?
I think having the 1-off execute in the primary list, the primary list probably isn't what Pathra wants to queue into this, but obviously as being the first game specialist, you have to. The 1-off execute will help her in this matchup, of course. We see Archivist Elysiana in the main list as well. The game usually doesn't go that long, but in some cases it can. Otherwise, the list looks fairly standard. Just 1 copy weapons project, 1 town crier, 2 ofs of everything else, 2 Omega Devastators in her main list as well. Not a lot of warriors are choosing to have both Devastators in the main list. They opt to tech in the second one in their anti-mage list, but Pathra does have 2 in her main list, which will definitely help her in this matchup. Yeah,
I feel like Patra's one of the players that has actually hedged a little bit in their primary list, just with that 1 execute with the 2 Omega Devastators. You're not going, hyper standard, even the Elysiana, because if you look at it, if Pathra played, for example, Frosty or Surrender in game 1, she can play to the Elysiana, game straight away if she wants to, because she just has that and the other 2 players don't. But not quite going to happen in this matchup. I think the game will definitely be ending a little bit sooner. But most importantly, Patra's tertiary deck that she's probably going to switch to has the double Super Collider, double BGH, and an additional Execute. So those are going to be the power cards. But first, we can see how she does in this one. DawN and Pathra just getting ready there and ready to go. And I'm looking forward to this just because I keep wanting to see this Mage deck played. I think we've seen some strong plays and some very strong games from this deck, and then also we've seen some weaker games. All I'll say is though, talking about Rivius and Tyler's list with the 2 Frost Novas, I think it's very fortunate for DawN going against Pathra that he's not running Frost Novas in his primary deck, because against Warrior, yes, this deck sometimes, curves at you, but Frost Novas I think would be way, way, way too slow.
Yeah, DawN in his primary list as well has 2 copies of Astromancer and the Archmage Antonidas, which a lot of players don't include at all, but some of them have them in their side list. So to have it in his main list against a warrior is going to be very good for his matchup.
It's going to be a tough matchup here, and we'll see how it goes. We see DawN and Pathra kicking it off with the Mage and Warrior. The double Clockwork Gnome and Wrench Caliber is a relatively quick opening, and is it quick enough is my question.
I'm not sure. I haven't played this from the Bomb Warriors perspective too much, but I think you want to keep some sort of earlier pressure. Like we've seen rogues as well opt to play out SI7 agents, for example, over Miscreants just to get something more aggressive on the board and start wailing on the Mage. And we see Pathra does keep a Pathra Clockwork Goblin for that game plan.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the Wrench Caliber was thrown, and I think that can just lead to just nods from things along the lines of basically Mirror Image and some of the other smaller minions. The Wrench Caliber, if your opponent goes wide, often just doesn't do enough anyway, and you aren't really relying on bombs to win this game. You want to just lock out their board quickly and then push a lot of damage.
Right. Sometimes early chip damage can add up to the point where a couple of bombs does end up finishing the job, but to get to that point, you do need those early minions, and that's what Pathra was mulliganing for.
On the other side, DawN's opening hand, although it's always nice to have a Conjurer's Call in, is a little bit lackluster, I think. Not getting any of the elementals, which is mainly what for this single Sandbinder in the list is for, but not getting any of the elementals, Harrison's tech cards, Ziliax even, not relevant for a while. DawN's probably just very happy he has this Arcane Intellect in hand.
Okay. Somebody ordered a bomb. Express mail service.
Yep. Paid extra for that one.
Yeah. Arcane Intellect coming out.
Yeah, this was just, I won't say life-saving, but it stopped DawN having a very, very poor opening game.
With the Giant pickup, we're going to see on coin the thing that Mage can do, where it's Elemental Vacation, play out the Giant for 2 mana, and then coin out the Conjurer's Calling. Very, very quick coming out from DawN if that's what he chooses to go for next turn. So Patra's going to have to figure out how she can deal with that. Obviously, she can't see that just yet, but
honestly would not mind. We of course have the ultimate caster vision, but Omega Devastator, I feel like this game can spiral out of control way before turn 10 for Pathra. So I wouldn't mind the Omega Devastator played now, because then almost no matter what your opponent does next turn, you're feeling pretty safe. You have a 4-5, a 3-3, and then either rushing 5-5s or a Dinomatic, which is going to deal 5 to the board. So I feel like it almost opens up a win-win scenario, regardless of what DawN even does next turn. He could do powerful turns, and you still have answers.
Yeah, I would like to see the Devastator come out as well. Just push the board you already have. The bridge between turn 4 and 10 is very large. I don't think Pathra might. She might be, depending on what DawN's hand is, she might struggle to get to the point where this Omega Devastator Battlecry will be used to kill something.
Right.
She opts to shield block. This does set her up to go armor up shield slam if a giant does come down from DawN. Fortunately for DawN, he has what we talked about earlier. He has the elemental vacation giant coin conjurer's calling. So even though Pathra can use shield slam to deal with one of these, she doesn't quite have the mana to deal with both. She could. Actually, she has to armor up this turn as well.
So that's the big problem for me, is this setting up shield slam makes you pretty much always float 2 mana randomly, right? Whereas if there was a 4-5 on the board now, like the turn would look so much better. It wouldn't be perfect, of course. You're still in trouble, but you're going to be in trouble no matter what if DawN does one of the most powerful plays you can do in the game. Right? Like that's just going to happen. But I think it would have been a little bit more solid. Because the issue is, with this Militia Commander, for example, if you want to Militia Commander and go, then your turn ends with nothing on board.
Yeah, you're staring down a giant, and you know your opponent has a Conjurer's Calling left.
And you can't even Militia Commander... there are so many options, but I think you might even either just Militia Commander Shield Slam, maybe, and save the 3-3? Because you can't do any damage preemptively to the giant because you know there's a second Conjurers.
Right, any damage
so
put
no
into
point.
it would be wasted.
Yes, there's no point. But maybe you do the preemptive damage by saving the minion. I mean, this is similar as well.
Yeah, taking off the minion that has more attack right now, developing more onto the board. I'm curious to see if DawN is going to try to chip off the armor or take a trade on the Clockwork Goblin and then go Conjurer's Calling. Could opt to also just play a Ziliax and say, I'm not going to Conjurer's Calling at all. He has a couple of options here. Especially with the Giant drawn, let's yet another option. Pathra is running 2 Brawls in her main list, so...
To be honest, it's even... not necessarily as powerful because it's a little bit more out of your control, but it's even Sorcerer's Apprentice, a couple of spells, and then the Mana Cyclone. But the only issue with that is you don't really want to give your opponent a good brawl with one big minion on board. So although it would generate a lot of value and maybe get you some crazy spells, and as if by by magic I summon the brawl into Patra's hand, But
well, suddenly Pathra does have a way to get ahead here. She could try to... The problem is everything else in her hand doesn't deal with a single minion on DawN's side right now. So with the Brawl being drawn, I wouldn't be surprised to see her just play the Brawl and say, all right, I need to win this 1 and 3, and that's how I win the game.
I think you just have to.
Yeah.
And also bear in mind, though, even if one giant, one of the big guys wins, then you've seen double Conjurer's Call now, so you can probably, especially with 7 armor, just deal with one giant for a turn or 2. Whoa. We saw yesterday, I think it was, unless all the games are blurring together, but Pathra went for a Dinomatic against the Shark, plus 3 minions, and it whiffed and just left the Shark alive. And there was a lot of discussion whether that was the right play or not between Pathra and some of the other American pros. But for me, I think you have to go for a bit more of a potentially more powerful play.
So at least with the main list, I don't believe Patra's going to be super favored. She does have some tools that help. Perhaps she thinks that playing the Dinomatic here might signal to DawN that she does not have a great way to answer this and might kind of bait him into playing more stuff onto the board, making the Brawl better.
The one point here is the 7 armor effectively negates 1 swing of the Grave Armor.
We've seen an Apprentice come down from DawN.
The problem is DawN doesn't have to overcommit to the board to have a good turn.
Right. I mean, you have 15 power on board. You don't need to do that a whole lot. You saw your opponent didn't really develop anything. Well, she developed a Dynamatic, but that doesn't help her quite clear the board. The 4 power on her side does technically threaten the Grave Horror if she has just 1 more damage, or even a Militia Commander from hand could do the remaining 5 damage to the Grave Horror. Looks like it is going to be a Mana Cyclone turn from DawN. He's launching the missiles.
Especially after seeing 1 Shield Slam. In a roundabout way, DawN won't care too much about armor, because you're going to destroy it anyway, right? You know, you're putting so much damage that if you win the board here with minions like this, you end the game in like 2 turns anyway, so... Oh wow, Fireball, a counter spell. Cinderstorm for some extra damage maybe, and also Research Project just isn't too bad. Maybe can mess around with Pathra a little bit, or dodge some bombs if DawN wants to go for a full hand at any given point.
I'm not sure if I like this too much from DawN. This opens him up to, I believe, a triple Warpath turn would... Oh no, it wouldn't clear the board. The Grave Horror is at 5 health.
And also, to be honest, going into turn 7 with this hand, do you care if your opponent spends all their mana on triple Warpath?
You have an Astromancer.
You have Astromancer, you have Giant, and obviously Sea Giant won't be live again, but still you have strong plays to follow up with anyway, and then your opponent would just spend that turn doing nothing.
Okay.
Cyclone lived, and there's even Weapons Project as well to clean it up.
Pathra being patient with the Brawl did manage to get a little bit extra out of it, although she's still not in a great spot. The Mana Cyclone is not that threatening, but Astromancer's coming down next turn perhaps. There's still a Giant left in DawN's hand. He has threats lined up for quite a bit.
Oh! Rope Pressure! Is it going to happen again?
Is this the first nose door move, Grandmasters?
No, second.
Second?
Remember I asked you about it yesterday?
Oh, right.
Insta-killed it. But remember, I think Pathra was one of the players who suffered from the rope the other day, right?
Defending the gates here.
Get rid of that.
It's an expensive... It's a lot of resources going into it, yeah.
And but there's not much else Pathra can do. Like I said, the problem with the Omega Devastator is, well, it's still another 2 turns. Well, okay, 1 turn till it can become live, but it's huge.
Is she going to make it that long is the question.
Well, that was my point in playing it just on curve. Like, from turn 4 to 10 against this deck, against this Mage deck,
they're not going to pass,
you
right?
could just die.
Yeah.
And now just again, it's just what is the answer? I don't even know what the Discover answer is. Some kind of taunt?
Kind of. Not quite. I mean, if you play that, DawN's just going to say, all right, I'm not going to... he might actually sink damage into it, perhaps, but I mean, you're on 15 health. I mean, from DawN's perspective, he just has lethal setup.
Got Fireball in hand.
Yeah.
There's even, depending on the minion, Security Rover, obviously a unique one, but there's even Fireball and Cinderstorm from hand, which is just tons of damage. Like,
curious to see if Patra's going to play Weapons Project here just to gain the extra armor, or if she's just going to armor up. She does go Weapons Project.
You need to be as safe as possible. You gain 4 armor, right?
Still dead to Fireball, I believe. There's 15 damage on the board, and the Fireball from hand is going to close out the game for DawN.
And all the while, the Omega Devastator is in hand. That could have put forward just a little bit more pressure at least.
It may not have ended up, you know, in a win for Pathra, but it would have at least helped her fight for the board. I mean, this way she's dead on turn 9. The Devastator didn't do anything.
Exactly, yeah. And, you know, I'm not saying it's 100% right or 100% wrong, but it just felt like a reasonable curve. And I feel like in this matchup, you do have, if you can, as the warrior, if you're the one being the aggressor, the Mage often isn't really that defensive. Yes, there's Mirror Images, yes, there's Ray of Frost, but it's not a defensive deck. It's a stall deck, which isn't really the same thing. There's no removal, per se, for a lot of big minions or even mid-range minions. But, you know, DawN's going to take the win there with the Mage looking strong. And now the real question is the anti-Mage tech from Pathra going to beat the anti-Warrior tech from DawN? Stay tuned, because we're about to find out.
We recently revealed Hearthstone's all-new 3-tiered esports program. Masters qualifiers are already well underway, and now we're ready to share details on the highest level of competitive play, Hearthstone Grandmasters. Are you ready to unlock all the secrets of Hearthstone Grandmasters?
Come close and listen.
Here goes. Hearthstone Grandmasters is the pinnacle of Hearthstone esports, composed of 48 of the best pro players in the entire world. Grandmasters is divided into 3 regions: Americas, Europe, and Asia Pacific, with each represented by 16 pros. These pros are selected by special invitation from Blizzard Entertainment. Criteria for selection include lifetime earnings, Hearthstone competitive points earned, contributions to the Hearthstone community, and more. So who are the lucky Grandmasters? Stay tuned because in the coming weeks we'll be revealing the inaugural Grandmaster roster region by region. In 2019, there will be 2 seasons of Hearthstone Grandmasters. Each season will feature 8 weeks of world-class competition played out in online tournaments. Grandmasters pros will earn both prize money and performance-based bonuses during the season, and they will automatically qualify to compete at all Hearthstone Masters Tour events, guaranteeing these marquee tournaments feature the fiercest competitors possible. And the best part? You won't miss a second of the action because matches will be broadcast live on twitch.tv/playhearthstone. 5 matches will be broadcast every Friday, with 5 more every Saturday. And if that isn't enough Hearthstone action, there will be 6 matches broadcast every Sunday.
More souls!
Mark your calendars because the first season begins on May 17th. Hearthstone Grandmasters is the pinnacle of professional Hearthstone, where the world's best pros battle it out every weekend online. Think you've got what it takes to reach the top? The path to Grandmasters starts with our Masters qualifier tournaments, so sign up today.
We're continuing the series of Pathra versus DawN here, and Pathra currently on the losing end here as DawN is at 1-0, and this Mage again just continuing to impress overall. It did have a bit of a rough day yesterday, but that was mainly versus Rogue. It was a lot of Mage Rogue matchups, and I feel like the more this gets played out, the more we discover just how strong, how weak the matchup is for Mage. But against Warrior, it does feel a little bit... I think I'd rather go against Warrior than I would against Rogue with this Mage deck. So let's go straight into game number 2. And Language Hack, I wanted to just discuss, Pathra's moved on to the big Mage Hunter variant of a list with the big Game Hunters, Super Colliders, and an Execute. But let's talk about DawN. DawN is actually stuck to his primary list when his secondary list, to me, looks like it's counter-Warrior deck.
So DawN's secondary list will be cutting 2 Sea Giants and a Zilliax to add in a second Banana Buffoon and 2 Questing Adventurers. The Questing Adventurers versus Warrior tend to just be an extra threat. The Sea Giant, of course, is a threat, but against Warrior doesn't flood that much. So it's difficult to get the Sea Giants down, at least at an early turn. Later on in the game, sure, you can spend 10 mana on it, but when you have a deck this powerful, you don't want to spend 10 mana playing a Giant, you want to spend 3 mana playing a Giant. Right. So interesting to see that DawN stuck with his primary list, and we'll see if he believes it's good enough against Warrior.
Yeah, and a funny note as well is that the anti-Warrior deck has only 3 cards different, and there isn't an additional weapon removal. So there's only 1 Acidic Swamp Ooze in DawN's list, which you can see in his hand right there. But the big key is Super Collider is the anti-mage weapon that Warrior can run, and Pathra hasn't just teched 1. She has teched 2. So even if 1 Super Collider, often on the turn you play it, gets value, right? You kill off the 2 minions most of the time, especially in this against Mage. But even if it's removed, there's a second one, and suddenly you have to start asking, although there's a lot of threats this Mage can put out, versus 4 swings of a Super Collider, plus the Warrior removal that it has anyway, I think Pathra's got way more of a chance now.
I think definitely, especially with Dr. Boom in the opening hand, one of the 2 executes there as well. DawN finds his hand isn't doing quite enough, so he throws out a Stargazer Luna here to hopefully draw some cards, or potentially also contest this Eternium Rover, try to stop the armor gain from coming out.
Yeah, and luckily enough for DawN, there isn't a Militia Commander And there's no easy coin Militia Commander kill.
Right.
It's going to be the Execute. A nod from DawN knows one is gone, but there is a second in the deck. But most importantly, I'm with Pathra on that one, that Execute.
Yeah,
I feel
it's
like
a bit scary.
leaving Luna up, especially with this Cyclone variant, can get you in so much trouble. DawN can basically just fill his hand most of the time, or more importantly, draw into better cards if his hand sucks, which is what you don't want him to do.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. Pathra recognizing that Stargazer Lord can be quite a bit of a threat. She believes that the list she switched to now with all the anti-mage techs can give her enough of an edge now that she can take the win in the game and hopefully the set. So she understands that she just needs more time for herself to get to all those answers before DawN presents his threats.
I've got a question for you as well. Just if we get into the deep part of the deck building,
Sure.
is in Patra's tertiary deck that she's playing right now, she used the maximum amount of 5 cards that you can change. You can change 5 or less. You
Right.
cannot change more than 5 at all, right? And one of the cards, she's removed the bomb package, so double Clockwork, double Wrench Caliber, and Blastmaster Boom. Is it strange that Harrison isn't removed? And you could just run a Clockwork or run a Wrench Caliber. Like, is that, because it's strange to me. I think on surface, I would have just thrown a Harrison out and let myself have a 3-mana 3/3 in the deck, because especially versus Mage, like, it's just decent. But what do you think about that?
I think if you're moving the package, all of it together, it probably makes a lot more sense than that. Sure, Harrison's a 5-mana 5/4, but there's still uses of it in the deck. She is running Weapons Project, so she can use Weapons Project in combination with Harrison Jones to draw 3 cards and get to her answers. But also, Clockwork Goblin coming out early on 3 doesn't really help you too much. It means you're not arming, so it's more difficult to get to the armor shield slam that you want to deal with the first threat. In some cases, you can use a Clockwork Goblin and a Militia Commander as follow-up for 8 damage to kill a giant, but it's kind of a not quite a corner case, but that doesn't happen that frequently if you're only running 1 Clockwork Goblin. And at that point, you are also using 2 cards to deal with 1 giant, so it's not quite the most efficient way. So I think she did just want to make sure she has as many cards as possible that can help her either draw to her answers or have the answers themselves.
And funnily enough, even at this point, it's a display of like an extra small thing of, well, if your opponent doesn't have a great start, they also don't have great ways of just dealing with a 5/4. So, this giant's played, DawN's had to play a giant into this Harrison, and Pathra needs minimal extra damage to kill this off now. And also, I would actually kind of like to just see the shield slam come down and just keep pushing with this Harrison now. Just start threatening a bit of damage. Why not?
Yeah, I definitely liked her playing out the Harrison Jones last turn, not saving it for the one of Weapons Project, just saying, all right, Mage isn't developing, let me try to do something, right? Mage is going to have a tough time dealing with this Harrison Jones. If I can push 5 every turn, that's pretty good. And from DawN's perspective, he didn't have Conjurer's Calling, so just developing the Giant is more than enough. Make Pathra have the answers. You've already seen an Execute.
Ooh. Okay, yeah, bit of a nod from DawN. It's like another giant, and also it actually restores 8 health to your own hero. So this extra damage that Patra's pushing with Harrison is going to get more or less negated by the Astromancer summon.
Patra trying to figure out how she wants to tackle this.
It's called Boom on 7, and just trade off the 5.
You could.
Again, you'll find out very quickly, casting with me, unless you are literally dead, I always want to play Blastmaster Boom on 7. Because again, Patra's got so much armor already. She, outside of, I think, overextending with resources, she's not going to clear the board regardless. So, I don't know. I like spending the mana this turn. Deal with it afterwards.
I kind of like developing the Super Glider here, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, punching the Astromancer means she takes less damage. This is good. She knows that DawN is running both an Acidic Swamp Ooze and an Harrison in his primary deck. So she knows that it can be difficult to get Super Collider value, and especially if using Harrison or Ooze kind of stops DawN from developing something bigger this turn, that can be helpful as well. She does have a lot of armor to work with, but she has used a Shield Slam already, so I don't think she's too concerned about...
Right.
I mean, obviously having more health is good, but I don't think it's that imperative she stays at the highest possible armor total just yet. And this way she does get to keep her Harrison on board again, continuing the pressure.
That's true.
The longer you could... I mean, you don't... Obviously playing just... Finding multiple turns to play Boom is good because it's 7 mana, and obviously it doesn't do anything other than, this Battle Cry, but that turn it's not doing a whole lot by itself. I do like her decision to just stay on the board instead. DawN's trying to figure out what he wants to throw down here. It looks like he's messing over the ooze to get rid of the Super Collider.
Yeah, that you almost can't play anything else if Super Collider's there. Anything you play often just dies anyway.
Yeah.
But now the follow-up is kind of mediocre. Maybe just
Not a whole lot to develop either.
ooh, okay.
So this is one of the ways you can use Khadgar. It's not only just unconscious calling, you can summon multiple mirror images here. And using the Khadgar plus mirror images, spending 3 mana, developing 5 things on board, which makes the Sea Giant cheaper.
Oh.
Oh.
And on demand, Pathra can just BGH this giant all the way home, and this is. It's just a highlight of this deck as well. Like, that might not have been the most obvious turn in the world to most people from DawN, but it's powerful because you've just activated a Sea Giant from nowhere,
Yeah.
which is insane. Like, we said that Sea Giants were the hard cards to play in this matchup if you were keeping them. But DawN made it look a little bit easier, but now Pathra with the BGH, nice answer, and Patra's not in a big rush to finish this game either, so these mirror images aren't really a huge threat right now.
She chooses to armor instead of quitting at the Militia Commander. I wonder if she might have wanted to do that instead, just push even more onto the board. Because again, DawN doesn't have removal. He's not running Flame Strikes. He's not running, you know, anything other than Ray of Frost, which is kind of single target and not an efficient way to clear minions. But she opts to just take some more armor. She's not under a lot of pressure. Perhaps she just doesn't want to throw out the Militia Commander. This could also be signaling to DawN, perhaps, that, oh, maybe I have a Brawl. I don't want to kill that many mirror images. Let's commit more to the board from you.
This turn is sick.
This turn is pretty cool.
I completely agree with what you said, but this turn is sick.
No, it is.
Ray of Frost, Evocation,
Nano
Cyclone. Haha, I think is the correct term.
So sometimes in this matchup, you want to wait as long as possible to get more than just 3 fireballs. The thing is, Patra's been answering... Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and so you get more than 3
Yeah.
fireballs, language hacker.
Okay,
I mean,
sorry,
like,
I didn't know it was in the box. I'm sorry. But Patra's been answering every threat that DawN's been presenting, so DawN's just saying, I can't wait forever and just get more fireballs. She's just going to get out of control. She's already winning boards, so let me do something now that'll let me actually, you know, take control of the board. And the Antonidas lets him do just that.
And it's still not an answer to Antonidas.
I think, yeah, DawN was shaking his head there, but he'll be happy to see when this turn is over that his Antonidas is still on the board.
Fireball, ping 2 fireballs.
Sigh of relief, something finally sticks, and this is quite a big payoff to stick, right? Every turn you can just launch 2 fireballs, if he so chooses.
So there's 20 damage this turn, and the hand doesn't change.
Right? This is why Antonidas is a good tech card in this matchup. Against other decks, sometimes you don't have the time to play it because it's not very defensive, but against Warrior, hide behind a few mirror images, they don't have a brawl. Haha.
Yeah, Patra's done a good job of just gaining a ton of armor, but this is almost half of Patra's health this turn. And as I said, DawN has lost 0 fireballs.
Right.
So there is still, what, 5 more fireballs left in the deck? Like, oh, in the hand, sorry.
Yeah. DawN should know that at turn 10 now, Patra can bring down an Omega Devastator, so this Antonidas will not hang around forever. She did pick up a Brawl as well. Probably not what she's going to use now.
Yeah. And DawN nods. It's like you expect this play by turn 10, and there's so many cards she's not played for a while.
I have not once played an Antonidas against Warrior and had it live for you know, bounce back to my turn and find it again on the board. So
DawN's a lucky guy then.
Yeah, doesn't happen very often.
You take those.
Exactly.
I think is the correct saying.
Yeah. That's what the kids are saying.
Yeah, that's what the cool kids.
This would be a good time for a man.
I think I've heard Zalay and Ike say that more than anyone else in my life.
So Patra has some options here. She can just use the Dynomatic to clear everything on the board. It only lets her push 1 damage, but maybe she thinks she wants to be more aggressive. Alternatively, she can develop these returning rovers, which, in combination with the Warpath, which she doesn't have in her hand yet, could get you know, her out of range of all these fireballs. I mean, 5 fireballs is what, 30 damage? She's technically out of range now, but
I'm just interested. Honestly, I would have just snapped Dynomatic there. There was 5 health on board, and you could have pushed with the minions.
well, Dynomatic
push
can also
damage
help you
phase.
clear the next thing that DawN develops.
That's true. That's true. It's I think it's just honestly a difference in playstyle. But all I saw then was like what 6 damage to face.
It was just been 1. The Omega Devastator only had Rush.
Oh, sorry, Rush, of course. Okay, I take it all back. I'm an idiot. Nope, you're completely right. The Rush changed everything. Of
DawN
course.
recognizing here that he can't just go face. he does need to clean up these rovers. The threat of Warpath is too big. And even the threat of just Ziliax coming down on any of these mechs will really put a rut in his game plan if he tries to go full face. So he knows he has to take this a bit longer and actually use these fireballs over the course of the rest of the game, not just the next 2 turns to try and burn out Pathra.
Yep. And there's still just this Harrison's just waiting for DawN as well, just for when that Super Collider's equipped. I doubt DawN is going to use it on a weapons project when he knows there's a second Super Collider in the deck. I think often with this hand especially, he can just wait a little bit more.
It depends how the game plays out. I mean, if he thinks he's taking it to fatigue, I suppose he can wait for the Super Collider, but if he thinks he's giving Pathra too much time to find the rest of her tech cards, he might just play it on anything to get it to get value.
The problem is I don't know if he can win if he lets a Super Collider swing 3 times. I think that's a lot of removal from one card.
If Pathra does develop the weapons project first, I don't know from DawN's perspective if he can win against the Super Collider. Like, he has no threats right now. He just has some spells, a Harrison and a Mana Cyclone. It's hard to win with just spells when your opponent is at full health and has ways to generate armor and stick on board.
This Magic Trick might end up becoming pretty clutch as well if there could be some card draw.
Yep.
Or even maybe at this point another Conjurer's calling from it or something.
That wouldn't be bad. You need some gas from DawN.
Oh,
well, that's gas.
That'll do. That'll do.
Plays it pretty quickly. Can think about playing Magic Trick, but he might want to save that for Mana Cyclone turn.
Okay, 5/5 and a 6/6. It's something. Ping off the 1/1 that's gaining the armor, and just say, you know what, initiative over to you, Pathra. See what you can do here. Now we will see the Dynamatic get some work done.
I'd probably see a Super Collider here. You have a Militia Command on the board that could take damage from the Dynamatic, and this is about as good as a Super Collider is going to get. I think from Patra's perspective, you know that DawN's kind of running out of threats.
Yeah, I was just meaning you could just trade the Militia Commander away, right, and do it this way.
I would have liked to see Super Collider here. Maybe she thinks that DawN is sitting on Harrison. If she's tracking cards, of course, or with Deck Tracker, she can know that there's, I believe, 2 or 3 natural cards in DawN's hand, and one of them has been there for a while, so perhaps she's trying to play around the Harrison by not developing the Super Collider here.
Yeah, I think I like this play because the problem is that I also feel the longer the game's going on, the less the Dynamatic is going to do. Whereas the Super Collider's always getting work done, because if it's not getting work done, then DawN has no threats, and then you're winning anyway. Whereas the Dynamatic, you know, say DawN makes a big board of Giants, well, cool, 5 random damage, it doesn't do enough. Whereas on that board, it just about, with the help of the Hero Power and a trade, did the job. So I do like this overall.
Discovering an Arcane Intellect off the Magic Trick, let him...
Ooh, okay.
All right.
Giant. He's getting there.
He's on 10 cards. Plays the Mirror Image so that he doesn't burn a card from his deck. Hero Power Dynamatic will clean up this board if Pathra chooses to do that. Lets her push 7.
It might not, right? Because the
Town Crier, right.
I mean, it's still likely to just get the job done anyway. I'm not saying. Yeah, I'm not having just a Worgen mech.
Oh.
But yeah, right. It's still plenty doable. I wouldn't be too upset to see that from Pathra. Again, I do kind of like playing the mind games of just almost forever holding the Collider.
Waiting until the point where the second giant does come down, yeah?
Yeah, because if both players don't play those things, so the Collider or a wave of big threats, then Pathra wins. Right? Like that, so she can just wait all day for this second Super Collider and just sit there. DawN has to play a threat or he will lose. Yeah. And then when he does play threats, then you at least get one really valuable swing out of that Super Collider for Pathra. Oh, and now double giant.
Magic Trick first. See what's in the box. I think he was trying to find another Conjurer's Calling here. Didn't quite find it.
Nova, not the end of the world.
Nova might be the pick. I Spear I could buy you some more health, but I think you need to prevent Pathra from using the minions on board.
Nova Giant. I love this as well. Playing the Sea Giant while it's playable with that Nova, and saying, well, guess what? My Mountain Giant's going to be cheap next turn anyway, so it's not really a problem. And also playing around Super Collider.
So far, no clear way to deal with the. Oh.
There you go. That'll work.
Saving the coin for Coin Bulldozer.
It's pretty solid. And again, this Mage deck can do some wacky things. It cannot really deal with a wide board. Look at DawN's face.
Oh,
It's
boy.
like, come on. Discover, bulldozer, coin, play, trade. But he's probably smiling back again now. His Mountain Giant into the Conjurer's Calling.
Well, we'll
He's
see if it's enough. He
looking
knows that
pretty good.
Pathra only has 9 cards left in her deck. It's very likely she has something that can help her answer this board. These are all the Conjurer's Calling. Ooh.
Brawl and Shield Slam means that you are guaranteed a clear at worst. At
This is
best.
lethal.
Oh wait, there's just enough damage, right?
Yeah, 18.
Oh, what am I talking? I complete look. Bulldozer is not a card that is often knocking about
Yeah.
and doesn't often get a second attack.
That's true.
But the damage from Bulldozer is just going to clean this game up. I was trying to look at defensive options because Pathra.
Welcome to Hearthstone Masters. Today, we're going to share one of the biggest changes coming to Hearthstone in 2019, an entirely new competitive format called Specialist. Specialist will be the default competitive format for Hearthstone Masters. From online Masters qualifiers to live Masters Tour events to the pinnacle of competition, Hearthstone Grandmasters. Ready to learn how the new Specialist format works? Let's dive right in. In this new competitive format, players select 3 30-card decks to bring to a Specialist tournament. The catch? All decks must be from the same class. In this regard, Specialist is a major departure from most other competitive formats. Amongst every player's 3 Specialist decks, one is designated as the primary deck. The player's other 2 decks are designated as secondary and tertiary decks. There are no special limitations placed on a player's primary deck aside from regular Hearthstone deck construction rules. However, a player's secondary and tertiary decks must share at least 25 cards in common with their primary deck. In other words, secondary and tertiary decks must mirror the primary deck with up to 5 cards swapped out. It is important to point out that duplicate cards count when comparing to a primary deck. For example, if you want to include 2 copies of Twilight Drake in your secondary deck, and there are no copies of Twilight Drake in your primary deck, then you must spend 2 swaps to include both cards. Unique or not, if a card isn't in your primary deck, it counts towards the 5-card difference limit. A player's primary deck is important for another reason. Whenever a new match starts, both its players must begin by piloting their primary deck. Only after the first game concludes can you choose to swap into your secondary or tertiary deck. You do not announce which of your decks you will be using in the next game, and you do not have to swap. After every game, this process repeats, allowing players to swap or stay until the match concludes. Importantly, you can swap to any of your decks between games, primary, secondary, or tertiary, including returning to your primary deck if you have previously swapped out of it. And those are all the rules for Specialist, Hearthstone's new official competitive format. So what are you waiting for? Get out there and start brewing your own primary, secondary, and tertiary decks to get a jump start on the new format and innovate like the pros.
Let the battle begin! Now the cards show me a tinker, so clever, but kind of a stinker. In a storm that's a raging, sits the last one I'm paging, a truly unusual thinker. All bots are now gonna go boom, but still, you shouldn't assume that I've made this selection on my own direction.
No, indeed, let's be clear. I have brought you all here, and now you're all in. It is time to begin.
It's the Asia Pacific Grandmasters here, and it's the third day of the first weekend. So the final day for now, and for this week, and for these players' submissions, we've got DawN versus Pathra, and it's all even 1-1. And I believe both players are sticking to what they played in the previous game. So it's going to be DawN on this primary deck, the deck we've seen him play every game so far, and Pathra on this tertiary deck, which is basically built to beat these mages. So who do you think's got it now that we know which versions they're still playing? Do you think Patra's just got the advantage here?
I think after last game, I might have to say that the warrior with all these techs might be able to come out on top against the mage.
Yeah, we see all the removals. Just a small note, just to give you an update on the text. It's double BGH and extra execute, which sums up to 2 in Patra's list now. And for me, most importantly, double super collider is just the biggest of deals.
DawN kept a few cards in his opening hand. Mountain Giant, obviously one of the cards you want early on against lots of decks, but primarily warrior. Pathra drawing some early removal. With this Town Crier paired together, she might be able to deal with the at least the first half of a Giant, depending on whether or not DawN chooses to save the Giant until he can Conjurer's Calling it on the same turn, or if he wants to just play it out on curve.
Also as well, you got to say, just already this execute just being available along with the Dynomatic and double Militia Commander means that, you know, there's so much that Pathra can do proactively, and being able to just deal with anything that DawN chucks onto the board means that these minions just being on the board are frustrating because they can activate the execute already without requiring something else.
I think DawN playing out this Apprentice is kind of a nod to the executes that Pathra has in her deck. This Town Crier being left on board means that an execute will be able to clean something up. So playing out the Apprentice here, even without getting that much value off of it, because next turn he can't do that much other than save Arcane Intellect.
Yep. And there's a huge payoff, isn't there, in the form of that Arcane Intellect for DawN, because if this Sorcerer's Apprentice doesn't go down, and we see that it can't go down, then, you know, he just gets to draw more cards for a little bit cheaper, and, you know, probably doesn't do a lot with that 1 mana, but still means he can get that through, and maybe he draws something like a magic trick that he goes for because it'll be 0 mana.
Yeah. There's some pretty big high rolls he can hit off of the Arcane Intellect. If he happens to hit Elemental Evocation and Cyclone, that'd be pretty powerful.
Yeah, exactly. He could draw like either way in a group of Elemental Evocation, Cyclone, and just any other spells would really be good for the turn.
Start off with the Intellect, see what happens.
Also, just most importantly, makes his Mountain Giant cheaper.
I think we're going to see that being it. Saving coins so that you can actually play Giant Coin Conjure Calling on 5 I think is kind of important because it gets out the threat early. I'm curious to see if he's going to trade into the Town Crier to prevent a future execute from coming out, or if he wants to chip away this armor to help.
I think you trade, right?
Yeah.
Because everything that Patra's realistically going to do this turn would only be a benefit if you traded.
Right.
If there's a Militia Commander, if there's anything, well, you know there's not much else because nothing was played the previous turn, so there's no answer last turn. And even if there's a on-curve or Mega Devastator, well, you'd still rather trade a minion the Sorcerer's Lips anyway, and so on. So, yeah, nice. Small things, but good things from DawN.
DawN has the option to just wait, which means next turn his Mountain Giant will cost 3 mana, and on 5 mana with a coin, he can Giant Coin Conjurer's Calling. And that's what he does. Doesn't want to play out the Mountain Giant just by itself and have it shield slammed or shield block, shield slammed or executed. Wants to make sure he can get Conjurer's Calling value off of the Giant, because if that first Giant is dealt with and you play it just on turn 4, what else are you doing until the Astromancer comes down, right? You give the Warrior a couple more draws to get some answers, and that's how you can quickly lose the game. So I really like DawN saving the Giant here.
Is there a big reason for Pathra not to play Ziliax this turn and just load it up preemptively?
I want to see the Ziliax.
because I don't like armor up pass. That always feels bad. And everything else is way worse because Ziliax is still a good answer when it's on the board, but the other minions are not. A lot of the minions are battle cry.
I really like the Ziliax for tempo.
Wow.
If she had Shield Slam in hand, perhaps armoring up could... there's an argument for, but I think here this might be a misstep. Just getting the Ziliax out on the board.
Whoa.
Of course, you can use it later to heal up, but the main thing is getting to later on, right?
Right. And the thing is, the armor up helps with a shield slam. The Ziliax does 3 damage, which is more than the armor up would gain with a shield slam in most instances, right? So, I don't know. I really like the Ziliax there because also, Ziliax often doesn't die. If it dies, your opponent's developing 0 minions most of the time. If it doesn't die, well, you have Ziliax, which has Divine Shield, and a Militia Commander, which is very, very powerful in terms of you can just kill anything that they play.
Right. I mean, now, with Pathra having less on the board, an obvious play, there's two main plays here, right? You can just Big Game Hunter one of the minions, or you can trade Execute. If she had a Ziliax on the board and she does the same thing this turn, either Big Game Hunter or Execute, the other minion won't connect face. You'll maintain your armor, and the Ziliax will, even if it gets pinged off, and say the Giant or the Graveheart would kill it off, that's 7-8 damage. It's not going to face. And that even gives you another option this turn. If you had Ziliax on board, instead of using Big Game Hunter Execute, you could now use the Ziliax Divine Shield with a Militia Commander from hand. A Militia Commander, which not always would end up clearing a big minion, could now be used with the Ziliax.
That's it, right? When you include in smaller costed cards, it's important to spend the mana on the big cost quickly and get it like just preemptively live, because then, as you said, the Execute and the Ziliax technically is played in the same turn, right? Because it can attack just like it would with Rush anyway, and you have the mana floating. So that turn 5, I don't know. That looked like a bit of wasted potential there. DawN, not too much of a surprise, just going to go with his Conjurer's Calling. And going to go with another one as well and say, let's go.
All right.
Patra's just got Brawl.
So you have a 40% chance of winning the Brawl. If you bump something into the Graveheart and then Brawl, you have a 25% chance to win it, but then you also have a 25% chance to be able to clear the board with an Execute. I think you'd probably just want to Brawl by yourself. Well, by itself, sorry.
Yeah. Because I think that the payoff for winning it is more than the payoff for executing, right?
The thing is, you do know that DawN has... DawN used 2 Conjurer's Callings this turn. One was the second half of the first one he used, and the second one was the first half of the second Conjurer's Calling. So Pathra knows that there's another Conjurer's Calling in hand. So she has to decide if she wants to take a bigger risk with the Brawl to just win it out and say, all right, I don't want you to... I want to try to win the Brawl. Or she can hedge a little bit and say, all right, there's... Even if I don't win the Brawl here, there's a chance I can still Execute and prevent you from Conjurer's Calling something. But I do think Brawl is the correct play here, and Pathra agrees. Okay.
And there you go. The payoff's there, and DawN shaking the head as he's just seeing that, yes, he did actually lose the Brawl. Pathra gets to push 4, which might not be the most mind-blowing thing in the world, but most importantly, the high attack of the Big Game Hunter means that it's easier to trade off against other minions next turn. Patra's got like an extra form of removal because this BGH lived, and I think that's like the 3rd or 4th Geppetto we've seen from summons.
Deja vu.
Yeah. And now what's the play going to be this time?
Well, she has options. Executing either of these really isn't what you want to be doing. You can use one of the Militia Commander. You can use the Militia Commander from hand to clear up the Astromancer if she chooses. She can go Dynamatic Execute. Perhaps using Execute here is fine. You do know that there's another Conjurer's Calling in hand, so preventing an 8-drop from being generated here is probably just good.
Yeah, there's 2 Executes in hand, but also if you held the Execute, then you're going to just need to play it next turn anyway, but it's worse because there's more minions. So this is just a clean kill. I do like this quite a lot. But now though, Invocation's there, Sorcerer's Apprentice there. DawN's just 1 mana Cyclone away from a good time right now.
So DawN does have the option to just go Giant, use the last Conjurer's Calling naturally in his deck. Perhaps we'll see more later on with Magic Tricks or Cyclones.
But this is a huge hurdle point, right?
Yeah.
The Giants are gone, apart from these 2 on board, if they're cleared. The Giants are gone, base Conjurer's Callings are gone. There's also 1 Astromancer gone, and there is still a lot of removal left in Patra's deck. It's kind of insane. There's the 1 BGH, there's the Executing Hand, and 2 Super Colliders left. And there's still Dr. Boom, Omega Devastators, the usual package as well.
I mean, that's the thing with Warrior in these techs. If you can make it to, and that's why Big Game Hunter is a big thing, because it helps you get to turn 10, at which point you can actually use the Devastators already in your deck, and then you just have so many answers. There are 2 Sea Giants left for DawN, but those are a bit trickier to use. One of the main reasons why the Conjure Mage is so powerful is that the mana cost at which it uses these big threats, right? This 12 mana Giant is actually 3 or 4 mana often when you're playing it against Warrior. The Sea Giants, if you spend 10 mana on it, it's a bit more fair. The Warrior has, you know, another 10 mana to try and deal with it. But when
it's more like a you go, I go thing, right?
Yeah, but with Mountain Giant, it's like, I'm going to spend 3 mana on 8/8. Your turn.
Seems good. Did you play Hearthstone from the very beginning, from like beta?
Just outside of beta.
Do you remember the Twilight Drake?
Yeah.
Was plus attack
Yeah,
and plus health?
Twilight Drake was huge.
Oh, that was apps. Imagine if Blizzard printed a card like that now. People would go nuts. But yeah, there's a cheap card that was actually better than Mountain Giant in most instances.
Yeah. Okay. DawN has seen a brawl, so using the images here to block Super Collider and also letting him to develop the other Sea Giant.
Ooh. Okay. Again, very important, as you said, to play around Super Collider, but honestly, Brawl Ziliax is just
It's not
fine.
bad. It's not, depending on what lives, of course. If one of the Giant lives, you're kind of sad that the Brawl ended up that way. Pathra needs to decide if she thinks this is worth a Brawl. And she does. She's probably just counting the threats left in DawN's deck and thinking, well, both Conjurer's Callings are gone. Both Conjurer's Callings are gone. If I just deal with this board, there's not that much left he can do.
There's also, you could just roll for Devastator, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, Heckle.
That could.
Is Heckle? Oh, Antonidas, right?
Yeah.
Is that the?
Maybe we pass on the Heckle bot this turn and say I'll take the 8 on the noggin.
But I did like the brawl there because I agree with what you were halfway through that with the Giants potentially gone.
Yep.
There's like 1 Astromancer Sea Giant all gone. The Conjurer's Callings are gone. There's
not much
Pathra only has
left
to
to brawl.
survive through an Antonidas, which outside of previous game is actually hard to get that many fireballs off. You normally get 1 to 2.
Right.
So he has to survive Antonidas and like maybe 1 more big board. And that's it. And then
Actually,
there's literally nothing left.
often you get much more than 1 or 2, depending on how the games play out. If Antonidas is in your hand early, you can try to plan it out and save Ray of Frost and stuff.
Yeah, I feel like on average you've normally done that, but you've normally done a big spell turn.
Right.
Unless you
to
have
set up
literally
before.
Antonidas early. So I feel like normally you have the big spell turn, and then the spells aren't always low enough cost. So I feel like say 2 is a reasonable average for Antonidas turns, unless you're purposely saving tons of spells. Which then, of course, you can go nutty if you just Antonidas, Sorcerer's Apprentice, go.
Right. I think that's what we're going to see DawN head towards throughout the rest of this game.
Oh, okay.
He does have an Astromancer left he could use for as threats. He knows both Brawls are gone, so he has to consider what's left for removal, right? There's an Execute left, there's a couple Warpaths, which don't quite clear this board. There are 2 Shield Slams left. We haven't seen any of those, but Pathra does not have enough armor to work with. With the Dr. Boom draw, if she had a Shield Slam, she could remove this Giant, but it's just not there.
I think you go for Omega. Omega, what am I talking about? Dynomatic.
And try to hit the 1 damage on the
1 damage needs to hit, and you have 5, and there's 4 minions, and also 2 of the minions have 2 health.
Right.
So the chance on them dying obviously greatly increases the chance on the final the final hits hitting the Giant. So I think you've got to make that play, because otherwise you are taking a big hit.
Agreed. You can't take too much damage. She's dealt with a lot of threats, but you need to make sure that when you finish dealing with all of them, you have more than 12, 15 health to work with, because fireballs.
Oh, first one.
Perfect.
And even killing off 1 of the taunts is nice too.
You take those.
Because it would be extremely unlikely to kill the Luna.
Right.
So you'll take another minion, right?
Can you imagine if we killed the Luna and damaged the Giant? That would have been best case scenario.
Yeah, then that Dynamatic's not got bombs, it's got a sniper rifle.
Giant, tempting to play because it draws you a card here, but it's a little too expensive.
I think DawN wants to become the Archmage for just a second.
Well, the thing is, both This turn signals to DawN, okay, I'm going in right now. Both executes have been used from Pathra, so it's going to be very difficult for her to deal with this Antonidas. And she's not, got crazy amounts of health to work with. So fireballs by themselves are just going to probably close out this game. Depends what Patra's drawing. If she happens to be able to draw a Shield Slap, she does have an answer for the Antonidas with a Dr. Boom in hand.
This Ray of Frost was actually pretty clutch as well, right?
On your own mirror image? Or on the
no,
Dynamatic?
on the Dynamatic. Because otherwise there was like the trade into the 0-1 Super Clyde Ziliax
Right.
to actually deal with the Antonidas.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Shield Slam now though.
Yeah.
Hero Power Boom Shield Slam. That was pretty
draw.
sick draw actually.
Deals with a Shield Slam. Fortunately, that does spend all of her mana this turn, and there is still an Apprentice and a Luna on the board. 3 Fireballs can be launched. That's 18 damage with 5 left on board, 23. So there's 9 off lethal. There is still a Ziliax in the deck or in hand, so DawN knows that. He has to consider whether or how to kind of dance around that, because if you leave the Dynamatic up and you get Ziliax, that can kind of be a problem.
Also, as well, a benefit for Pathra is she can actually Hecklebot now that she knows Antonidas is gone.
Right.
And Ziliax as well.
That's quite a large mech.
Yeah, and also just 6 health on demand, but let's just note, maybe some sweet, sweet justice for DawN is now he has the Bulldozer instead of Pathra, and that might just be enough to push him over the edge. There's no way to take the shield off.
No, there's not. Ooh.
These mirror images are causing havoc
Right?
with the Super Collider. Absolute havoc.
It's crazy seeing some of these cards. Mirror Images hasn't seen play in how long?
Honestly, they were played in Flamewaker days sometimes,
Right?
Like sometimes as extra like cheap procs for Flamewaker. But yes, it's not been played seriously for a very long
It's
time.
crazy seeing cards like these from the classic set that when you look at, they're like, oh, that doesn't do that much, but it can do a lot.
It's all just about support, right?
Right. Patra's looking for something. She might have to make a defensive play here with a safeguard, but I don't know if it's enough.
And also the problem, this Divine Shield is nuts.
It's
the problem
actually
is she can't do
incredibly
the
frustrating.
Ziliax play unless she Omega Devastators.
Oh, the Rover.
Divine. Oh, okay.
So the Rover lets her deal with
Well-
the Mermage, but it's still not enough to be able to deal with the Bulldozer this turn.
I was wondering
Yeah.
if you Omega Devastator, the Divine Shield, and then Ziliax trade. So you heal, and the shield is off the dozer. It's a stretch. Don't get me
Okay,
wrong.
sure.
But then you've got to think, well, although Pathra knew there were fireballs, to be fair, so the Ziliax would have been cleaned up by fireballs anyway. It just would have been a bit of extra healing. Would it have been enough? Almost certainly not. At least if not that turn overall. And DawN actually ends up getting the win. I thought Patra's Warrior was just good enough, but frankly, the mirror images were clutch.
Yeah.
If Pathra could have landed a Super Collider at any point in that early to mid game, the game looks way different. The Giants were always defended, and then the Bulldozer Divine Shield and the other minions were defended for so long. It was absolutely insane. So congratulations to DawN on that win. Some very, very solid play indeed. And that's going to be match 3 done for the day. We have 3 more. It's extra long Super Sunday for you, so don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back with some more Asia Pacific Grandmasters.